your outlet, Amwash.media, is reporting that a high-ranking Iranian source says the Trump team gave advance notice of bombings of nuclear sites and insisted they are intended as one-off. Just explain what that tells us about this attack and what might happen next.
Becky, in many ways, what we're seeing, to me at least, having covered the 2020 assassination of Quds Force Commander Qasem Soleimani in Trump's first term, is that he wanted to send a big message, get the headlines, show U.S. resolve, but then avoid a wider war. At the time, he was ready to absorb an Iranian response, which was, I think, highly choreographed. It was mainly symbolic. Iran fired ballistic missiles at U.S. bases in Iraq. No American soldiers were killed. I think this time, the fact that he gave the notice, the fact that he immediately sent the message to Iran that I do not want to escalate this further, I think he sends the message that he understands that Iran needs to do a response, needs to carry out a response, mainly to save face. But beyond that, he doesn't want the Iran-Israel confrontation to expand into a wider war that may damage him domestically. So I think looking ahead, what potential options does Iran have? Please go ahead.
What are your sources telling you, and indeed what is the official Tehran line on damage to these sites?
So far, I think we're still in the early stages. The preliminary information that they have is that they need to assess, basically evaluate what kind of damage there's been. There's talk about some of the entrances to the Fordou facility having been closed because of the U.S. bombings. We still don't know. What we do know, apparently, according to sources we've spoken to, is that the majority of the enriched uranium that Iran has, the stockpile, is moved already to secure locations prior to the strike. And I think this is important because many people tend to think about the Iranian nuclear program as about a bunch of buildings and facilities. To me, at least, it's about the brain trust, about the human resources, the thousands of scientists that they have. And this is what they mean when they say that you can't bomb away knowledge. And on the other hand, it's also about this access to uranium, which they have, and which was mainly undamaged in these strikes. So I think for Iran, it's not that difficult to reconstitute their program. So ultimately, I think the U.S. is not oblivious to this. They understand that they need a political solution in the end. There's no military solution to this problem. So I think this is a lot of choreography, and essentially we're going to have to look at what may Iran do next to save face, signal to the United States that's ready to talk.
Joining us now is H.A. Heylier. He's a senior associate fellow with the Royal United Services Institute, and he joins us now from the region, live from Cairo, Egypt. H.A., good to speak to you again. I wonder if I could begin with the question that I ended there with Tom Foreman, and that is this the beginning of something or the end of something? It appears to be that President Trump's intention here is to finish the military action, the war we've seen underway between Israel and Iran over the course of the last week, with the U.S. now involved, by either ending or severely damaging Iran's nuclear program. The question is, does it end, or does it spark something bigger?
Well, thank you for having me on the program. Actually, your question to your colleague was exactly what I was thinking. Does this end something, or does it begin something? And I think that will be the question that will be on everybody's mind, not only in the region, but internationally. But it will be ending something else as well, or at least this will be the question that people have. Of course, we'll be thinking about the war, whether or not this sets up a spiral of even greater violence and destruction. But it will also set up questions about, is this the end of using international law as the basis of international relations, at least within the region? The United States entered this war. There are many questions within the United States, of course, about how that was done in a partisan fashion and so on, as you've just covered. But also within the region, then, on what basis? There was no United Nations Security Council resolution that authorized it. It was a unilateral American decision, a decision that was taken by an administration that was negotiating with this regime, with the Iranian regime, only 10 days ago. So the precedents here, I think, are very serious. I think this will have wide-ranging consequences for a very long time to come. And it happens not in a vacuum, but at the quote-unquote end of 20 months of another war that is taking place, Israel's war on Gaza. And you can't separate these two environments. That sense of impunity of taking this sort of unilateral action, I think, is really going to be worrying a lot of regional leaders, because they're looking for predictability. They're looking for negotiations. They're looking for the hope that this region will turn into a more peaceful one. And instead of the past 20 months, they've just seen several wars break out without any prospect of international law coming to bear.
Let me ask you, because, of course, Iran has taken a series of military actions, right, outside of international law. Despite concerns about a broadening war, will there be those in the region who perhaps quietly hope for the end of Iran's nuclear program?
So here's the thing, right? I don't think you're going to find many, quite rightly, who are fans of the Iranian regime. I mean, if we think about what the Iranian regime did in places like Syria, in places like Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, I mean, there, at the very least, you can say there are impacts and influences that are entirely negative. In spite of all of that, I don't think you'll find any political leader within the region, with the exception of the Israelis and Netanyahu in particular, who frankly has domestic concerns that he wants to address through these sorts of actions. The overwhelming feeling in the region from all quarters, including those who are incredibly cynical about Iran, again, rightly so, and were even urging the Trump administration to be more aggressive with Iran in Trump 1. In the first Trump administration, none of them wanted this. None of them wanted this war. None of them wanted escalation. They all wanted this to be de-escalated, precisely because they're concerned about the spiral that takes place. And they're also concerned that attention is now shifting away from what they see as the much more destabilizing force in the region, which is the state of Israel. So I'm glad that you pointed out that Iran has carried out a number of operations that are incredibly damaging to regional security over the years, but they were recognized as a pariah state for doing so. It's very different when you have the United States doing actions that are outside of international law and its allies.
And some history of that as well, going back to the Iraq invasion. H.A. Hellyer, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you.